Everyone, and welcome to another edition of Folklaw. This is the program that makes the arts, culture, civic affairs, and of course the law accessible to everyday folk here in the San Francisco Bay Area and throughout the nation. I'm your humble host, Daniel Everett, attorney at law. Ladies and gentlemen, with me here today, we have Helen Hall. She is the creator of a fantastic and fascinating new project. It's called Infinity. Pictures of Infinity, the ultimate quest of Nikola Tesla. Tesla said Earth itself is a source of unlimited, naturally sustainable energy, and this is a film that retells his theory with experiments. Ms. Hall, thank you so much for being on the program.
Thank you for inviting me.
I'm not sure if you are aware, but there have been alleged, I'm gonna put that in air quotes, fundamental breakthroughs in supercomputing this week alone, and I'm sure none of it would have been possible without Mr. Tesla's contribution. I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got involved in this fascinating new film.
Okay, so my background is in music. I'm a composer, and I also studied physics and sound engineering. So I've always been interested in sound as vibration and sound in the world and that sort of thing. And just the things that make up music, the fundamental principles such as resonance, vibration, harmony, tuning. Mm-hmm. These are things that instrument designers would understand and that have to do with the basic ways that musical instruments produce sound.
Physics.
And at a certain point, I became interested in electromagnetism, and I decided to explore this interest in film. So I'd never made a film before. So I made a film that was actually based on the sound waves of electromagnetic radiation. And of course, we're surrounded by electromagnetic radiation, and that's the basis of everything that we do. And that's also the basis of Tesla's system of alternating current electricity. But the energy that
we're gonna have to slow down a little bit.
Okay.
If only because some of us have a very rudimentary understanding.
Okay.
Of all of this. No, this is absolutely fascinating.
Okay, so let's just say simply that everything that we use now, and everyone has a cell phone, everyone, I assume most people do, and computers, etc. So this is all, let's say, electromagnetic. That's the energy that it's running on. And this is...
And where does that come from? I have to be like a 4-year-old here.
Oh, well, that's a long story, but what I'd like to focus on, again, that has to do with our understanding of electricity and how we harness it. And of course, Tesla was a major figure in the development of our present technology, as you just acknowledged. It forms the basis of everything that we do now. But Tesla, when he invented our system of alternating current electricity, he wasn't finished. For him, that was just the beginning. Can you unpack that just
a little bit? The theory of alternating
alternating current electricity.
There we go. What exactly, or if I was like a 4-year-old, how would you describe that?
It's a system that makes it possible to transmit electricity over long distances.
Okay.
So I'd have to think about how to explain that to a 4-year-old in a better way, maybe. But we have DC electricity, and that's the electricity that's stored in batteries, for example, and we can use it locally. But there's a film that's coming out, I think it's any day now, it might even be today, called The Current War, and it's about, there was a time when there was a competition between Tesla's system of alternating current electricity, which is what we use now,
waves,
and Edison's system of direct current electricity, the limitations of which were that it couldn't be transmitted over long distances.
I see.
So that's a dramatic feature film that really, I haven't seen it, but it explores that.
Is what we're talking about essentially the ability of one device to transmit this energy and another device to pick it up and then make sense of it? Is that? That's
part of it, but when I talk about alternating current electricity, it's the electricity that we use now. It's the form of electricity that we use. It's our system which makes it possible to transmit. It's transmitted across power lines, everywhere. So it can be transmitted over long distances, and then it has transformers that make it possible. So it's transmitted, and then it's received and every house has a little transformer in which the electricity enters the house.
I'm sure for someone who's schooled in it, I guess maybe you could understand the possibilities of this. And I guess what I'm wondering is, when he was working on this thing, because this is essentially of an exploration of his life, did he understand the possibilities or the scope of what he was doing?
Yes, he did. In fact, there's so much about him that's incredibly fascinating. I think he was about 7 years old when he told an uncle that he saw a picture of Niagara Falls, and he said, "Someday I'm going to harness Niagara Falls."
Is that right?
And provide electricity for everyone. He knew
That's
that.
what he said?
And yes, he did. Yes.
Get out. I'm sorry, how old was he?
He was 7.
Really?
Yes. And this is something, one of the many things about him that was unique is that he trusted his intuition. He worked from a very different place than most people. So although he was very well educated, it was his intuition. He had images in his mind. So when he was as a 5-year-old, he invented a water wheel, and it was unlike any that had been seen before. It was something that he imagined, and he imagined it, and he built it. And not only that, but it actually worked, and it worked on principles that we're not familiar with. So he was from a very young age showing a natural ability to understand, really, and this was also his values. He wanted to understand how nature works, and he wanted to reproduce those effects. So when he experienced lightning, he thought, "Wow, look at all that energy. We could use that energy. That energy would make our lives so much better if we could harness it." And so he decided he was going to do that.
Fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Now, I must say that I think in order to really appreciate someone like this, I mean, I guess layman's person can, but you yourself obviously came to appreciate him and his research and his mind for a long time as well. You've been researching this and looking at his life for years now, correct?
Absolutely, yes.
And how did this come about?
Again, because of my interest in sound and music, and Tesla was working with musical principles. So I'll put it simply, I think the energy that we're familiar with now that is running our world, that everything is the basis of everything that we use, our computers and our cell phones, it's different than the energy that he was harnessing, that it was his greatest dream, and as you said, the ultimate quest of Nikola Tesla. His ultimate quest was to harness the Earth's natural electricity. So he understood that the Earth is like a magnet because it has an iron core. It's spinning all the time. Our Earth spins. And he said simply that because the Earth spins, that the very nature of that produces enough electricity naturally to meet all our needs everywhere in the world, for everyone.
Wow.
And his dream, and it's not just a dream, but it was in fact solidly grounded in theory and proof of concept that this would be possible. And he spent a year in Colorado Springs conducting experiments. He went to Colorado Springs because the high elevation, unique atmospheric conditions were perfect for experiments with electricity. And he built inventions to send and receive the natural electricity of the Earth.
How much of this is if you will, tinkering with things, or sort of designing things in his own head?
It's solidly based. The thing is, much of the way he worked was intuitive, but it's based in solid scientific
Principles,
yes. The thing is that he discovered a lot of these principles really so far ahead of his time, and he wasn't concerned with being recognized for being the first to discover them. So it's not known, and so there's a lot of work that needs to be known so that he can be recognized as the true discoverer of many of the things that we know now. For example, when he was in Colorado Springs, he invented a very sensitive receiver for receiving the natural energy of the Earth, and while he was experimenting with it, he was picking up some signals, and at that time, this was the turn of just the early 20th century, 1900, and he picked up signals with his receiver, and he believed they were from Mars. So he wondered if there might be life on Mars, and they were signaling him. But then he also just thought, he wasn't really sure. He just knew what it wasn't, that it wasn't anything that he knew. And some scientists in the last few years have actually recreated not only his receiver, but all the conditions in which he conducted those early experiments. And they have concluded that the signals Tesla was receiving were from one of Jupiter's moons.
Oh, wow.
And this is 50 years before Carl Jansky picked up signals from the Milky Way galaxy, and that was the origin of radio astronomy. So Tesla picked up signals 50 years before that. And that's just one example. Another example, he believed that he had discovered the resonant frequency of the Earth. This was part of his experiments and part of how he was approaching ways to harness the natural electricity of the Earth. This frequency is known as the Schumann resonance. And again, 50 years before Schumann actually made it public, Tesla had already discovered it.
Now, what? I'm not sure if this was clear for our audience. What time period are we talking about? And
we're talking about.
How did that?
Yeah.
I guess, time period
Tesla
affect his early life?
Okay, so Tesla. Let's say that his work with electricity, alternating current electricity. So that was around 1895 that the system was implemented, and that electricity, as we know it, came into use. They started putting power lines everywhere so that we could have electricity based on Tesla's system. And it was 1891 when he invented something known as a Tesla coil. And I think quite a few people are familiar with the Tesla coil because it produces these spectacular displays of lightning-like discharges. This was where he began experimenting with harnessing this other form of electricity, which was the natural electricity of the Earth. So he was going in a different direction at that point.
And was he an American, or?
He's actually from Serbia. He came to America, I'm trying to remember the year, I think it was 1874. So he came to America in his early 20s. He had been working for Edison's company in Paris, and then he came to America. He had 4 cents in his pocket, and he started working for Edison, and at a certain point they parted ways. They were longtime rivals. I think part of that is explored in the film that's coming out called The Current War.
Yeah, could you maybe delve into that a little bit, in the sense that it's sort of well, in modern times Edison is known of a bit of a hack, if you will.
I think Edison was a much better businessman than Tesla was, and he, I think he was very pragmatic.
Is that you being nice by saying he stole other people's ideas?
Oh,
Edison, that is.
I've heard that, yes, and I think it's probably true.
Shame, and we're going to delve into that a little bit on the program, because if you are a genius, a marvel like Mr. Tesla, certainly, at least in today's day and age, you might want to have some intellectual property considerations.
Oh, absolutely. And this is one of the unfortunate things that Tesla was. He was a great humanitarian. His values were very, very different than those that he was confronted with when he came to America. So he really wanted to devote his life to improving the lives of other people. And he felt that he could do that through his inventions. And that was what was driving him, was to make the world a better place. And also, he wanted there to be peace. He felt that one of the greatest reasons for war was inequality of energy, that some countries are rich in natural resources and some countries are less so. And he felt that if there was a way to provide energy for everyone on the Earth, that it doesn't matter what natural resources there are, or what socioeconomic conditions, that everyone had the right. He saw that as a right, that everyone should have access to energy, and that would level the playing field for people, for the world. He felt that a lot of the wars were based on those inequalities of resources, of natural resources.
And he was certainly...
So he felt that would be a big step toward peace.
He's certainly undoubtedly right in that respect, which undoubtedly goes into a lot of the problems we're even having still today with sparse natural resources, oil.
Well, that's exactly it. But Tesla also, this was what was motivating him. So imagine that his system of alternating current electricity was accepted and was implemented everywhere. And that, for most people, that would be enough. But for him, he wasn't satisfied. He said, there's so much more to do. He knew that an even better way of producing electricity, as I said, and so he devoted his life to that. And that is also the subject of my film. It's not widely known. A lot of it is misunderstood, but it's very, very real.
Well, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to explore one of the reasons you got into this, and that is the exploration of music. We're going to listen to a track coming up here in just a second. So stay tuned, everyone. You're listening to KXSF LP San Francisco's 102.5 FM. This is Folklaw. Stay tuned. We'll be right back.
Nikola Tesla discovered the Earth produces an unlimited reservoir of natural electricity and invented a system to harness it based on an entirely new understanding of energy.
Nature has stored up in the universe infinite energy.
This was his vision for a sustainable energy future more than 100 years ago, and he believed it would raise the standard of living for everyone on the planet. I'm Helen Hall, and I'm excited to present Pictures of Infinity, a feature documentary about this discovery and invention Nikola Tesla called his greatest achievement that remains virtually unknown to the rest of the world. Nikola Tesla was the great visionary scientist, engineer, and humanitarian who invented our present system of alternating current electricity and many of the motors, generators, and transformers that make this system possible. He was the true inventor of radio, as well as lasers, spark plugs, and the circuits used in televisions and computers. The film is the result of more than 20 years of my original research.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Folklaw here on KXSF LP, San Francisco's 102.5 FM. We took a break to listen to Black Tar Caviar. That was from the Young Mothers. And then we listened to a clip from Pictures of Infinity, the ultimate quest of Nikola Tesla. And we're joined by the producer of that film, Helen Hall. Ms. Hall, again, thank you so much for being on the program.
Well, thank you again for inviting me.
So, in the quick segment that we were listening to there, you were alluding to his greatest discovery.
Yes.
And it sounds like you're trying to retell that. And with all the great discoveries that he had, are you saying that there was one that stood out and that is worthy of your storytelling venture?
Absolutely. Tesla discovered that the Earth produces an unlimited reservoir of natural electricity, and he invented a system to harness it based on an entirely new understanding of energy. That is the basis of my film, and it's the most incredible information that I've ever come across in my life.
To play the devil's advocate, I did arrive here in a gas-powered vehicle.
Yeah.
That being said, I'm wondering if he did invent or figure out how to harness the Earth's own energy in a way that would supply the rest of humanity. I guess, again, why did I find it necessary to arrive here to the studio in the gas-powered car that I did?
That's a very good question. First of all, his system wasn't ready to be implemented right away. There were then and still are years of development ahead to make it practical. He did provide proof of concept, but this was at the time when you can imagine that the people who were financing his system of alternating current electricity were investing in copper mines and all the infrastructure, and so they weren't interested in exploring another system, that they weren't interested in a better way to harness electricity or to use electricity. And also, when he was working in Colorado Springs, it was around the time that gold was discovered in the area, and so a lot of people were focused on that. So it's really about the values at the time and where the money was going. He wasn't really focused on business, or he was constantly having to work to attract investors to his projects and that sort of thing.
And what about now? Has there been an effort for folks to sort of pick up and run with that particular concept or with that particular idea?
No, it's always been on the margins, and that's something that is very difficult to understand. But what Tesla was doing was very different than our common understanding. And so a lot of it was dismissed because it doesn't fit into it's different than what we're taught in school, for example, because Tesla's understanding is not something that can be learned from textbooks.
Well, speaking about understandings, from electromagnetic waves to musical theories, well, now we're in film, so this is a completely different endeavor in and of itself. I was wondering if you could tell our audience a little bit about the nuts and bolts of filmmaking and the difficulties, if you will, of trying to make this concept come to life.
Oh, okay. So, so this is a film, and the whole subject of the film is this, and it was Tesla who called this his greatest discovery. He knew that we were going to need energy. This is more than 100 years ago. He anticipated our current environmental crisis, and his values were such that he really believed in understanding and basing things. He always wanted to work as nature works. So he wanted to be in harmony with nature. He wanted everything. He wanted us to be able to live on the earth and to have a source of energy that is sustainable and that is non-toxic and infinite. And that was exactly what he worked on right until the end of his life. And
what about the sort of the pictures, the archival research that went into making this possible? How did you go about that process? I know there's a lot of folks out there interested in possibly exploring documentary filmmaking themselves.
Oh, okay, for documentary filmmaking. Well, this was a very, and remains a very, very challenging subject. So first of all, as far as Tesla and going to original sources, well, he did write an autobiography as a series of chapters that appeared in a journal called Electrical Experimenter, and that's an excellent source. There's a few biographies of Tesla that are very good. And I started with visiting the archives at Columbia University. Tesla gave a very famous lecture where he introduced the public to the Tesla coil for the first time, and that was at Columbia University. And they actually have an archive of a lot of his material from the period when he lived in New York. But it's mostly personal correspondence and other kinds of artifacts. It's not really the scientific documentation. So all of his papers, when he died in New York in 1943, all of his research and papers were eventually shipped to Serbia and to what became the Nikola Tesla Museum. And they're in an archive, and there's so many strange circumstances. There's so many surrounding Tesla and his research. The archive is pretty much inaccessible to most researchers, and that's a long, long story about why, and it's always been that way.
The mystery of the man.
It's part of the mystery, that there's so much mystery and controversy surrounding every aspect of his life and work. And
does that include his personal life?
Yes, I would say so, yes.
And how so?
Well, because he was alone, his values were very different. He was really on a mission to accomplish what he did, and he didn't really have a traditional personal life. He never married or had a family, and he lived in hotel rooms. He wasn't concerned with material wealth.
He was married to his work.
Married to his work, absolutely.
That must have frustrated some people around him.
Oh, for sure it did, yes. He had a mission, and he felt that was what he was meant to do, and he was happy doing it. And he also felt that he needed to be alone and to be working in isolation to achieve what he did as an inventor.
fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
I've never encountered a more fascinating subject. So as far as making a documentary film goes, it's very, very challenging because, of course, the subject in itself is invisible and inaudible. We're talking about electricity, but a natural form of electricity, which is everywhere in nature, and Tesla harnessing it. So, and then inaccessibility of a lot of his materials, and the fact that, it's unbelievable, but the only archival footage I could find of Tesla, and that, as to my knowledge, it's the only footage that exists, is in fact of Tesla's funeral.
Is that right?
Yes.
So there's no. This is the sort of the dawn of the film age, though, correct?
Yes, it is. And so why is there nothing? But there isn't. There isn't. There's nothing, and there isn't even a voice recording of Tesla.
Oh, that's horrible.
It is.
That is horrible.
And so there's just so many mysteries surrounding his life and his work, and so that's part of the challenge, but it's also part of the intrigue, I think, too.
Wow, what a completely
subject that has so much mystery surrounding it.
What a completely different day and age, if you think of this. I'm not sure if a human being alive right now could ever even hope, if they wanted to die without their voice being recorded or a little snippet of them. It just seems to be omnipresent.
True.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, we had talked briefly about intellectual property, but I do just want to remind our listeners that intellectual property protection is protection for inventions, literally, and artistic works, symbols, names, and images created by the mind. You can learn how to protect intellectual property by using patents, trademarks, and copyrights. Just to explain a little bit, a patent grants property rights on an invention, allowing the patent holder to exclude others from making, selling, or using the invention. Inventions allow many businesses to be successful because they develop into new or better processes or products that offer competitive advantage on the marketplace. As far as trademarks, a trademark is a word, phrase, symbol, or design that distinguishes the source of products, trademarks, or service marks of one business from its competitors. In order to qualify for patent protection, the mark must be distinctive. For example, the Nike swoosh design identifies athletic footwear made by Nike. Trade secrets. A trade secret is a formula, process, device, or other business information that companies keep private to give them a business advantage over their competitors. Examples of trade secrets include soda formulas, customer lists, survey results, computer algorithms. And finally, we have copyrights themselves. Copyrights protect original works of authorship, such as literary works, music, dramatic works, pantomimes, and choreographic works, sculpture, pictorial, and graphic works, sound recordings, artistic works, architectural works, and computer software. With copyright protection, the holder has the exclusive rights to modify, distribute, perform, create, display, and copy the work. So certainly, if you're producing stuff on Mr. Tesla's scale, or even less than that, I advise you to go out and find a lawyer and maybe get some advice about intellectual property protection. And I'm sure that also goes with making a film. So when we get back, we're going to talk a little bit more about the filmmaking process, how to protect that, especially when documentary filmmaking, when you're using archival footage and stuff of that nature. But we're going to be right back, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening to Folklaw here on KXSF LP San Francisco 102.5 FM. I'm your humble host, Daniel Everett, attorney at law. We'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. We are not bodiless. We are with energy, and it is flowing through us. And to guide us through that wave, if you will, is Helen Hall. Miss Hall first entered the world of filmmaking with Power Lines, a documentary about the mystery of electromagnetic fields, which began as a musical score based on the sound waves of electromagnetic radiation. Power Lines was premiered at the Vancouver International Film Festival in 1998 and won the International Jury Award at the International Festival of Films on Energy in Lucerne, Switzerland. I butchered that, but nonetheless, in 1999. It has been featured in the book Design Your, Anthony Dunn, UK, a magazine, Music Works, Toronto, and the soundtrack has been released independently on CD. She also produced a website for Power Lines. Now, she has a completely different endeavor, but full of energy nonetheless. Pictures of Infinity, the ultimate quest of Nikola Tesla. Tesla said Earth itself is the source of unlimited, naturally sustainable energy. This film retells his theory with experiments. Now, you didn't get hurt during any of these experiments, did you?
No, not directly.
Well, this is good. That's a good start. We can say no humans were harmed during the filming of this movie.
Absolutely. There was something I wanted to say when you were speaking about patents. So it directly relates to the subject of my
I can't
song.
believe you want to chime in on patents. Usually people want to give that segment of the
Oh,
program
no,
out.
I do, because listen to this. Tesla went to Colorado Springs, where he spent a year developing inventions and doing experiments and research to find ways to harness the natural electricity of the earth. And during that time, so he had a correspondence with a close friend in New York who is the editor of a magazine called Century Magazine. So here's what Tesla was dealing with. He had a lab in Colorado Springs. He had some funding that was provided from private investors to do the research he was doing in Colorado Springs. And during that time, Marconi was stealing his patents for radio.
Yes, because I was going to say
So
that.
Tesla
It was
was
my
the true
understanding.
inventor of radio.
Yeah, I have a
but
broadcast
Marconi was
background. I have a broadcast background, but for the folks out there, Marconi, when you mentioned that previously, I was like, wait a second. It was my understanding Marconi invented the radio. Everybody who got a B- out of basic comm knows that.
Well, that's what Tesla was up against. That's exactly what he was up against, because he was the true inventor of radio. So people can research that on their own. But he was imagine he's in Colorado Springs. He's got all this new invention, this whole realm of energy that's opening up, and he's making great progress. So he wrote in letters to his friend Robert Underwood Johnson in New York. He wrote, "Here's the situation I'm in. I am doing all this groundbreaking new work. I don't know what to do. I don't know," because he has to publicize it to get investors interested, and he can't work without some kind of funding. And yet, when his work is made public, it gets stolen by other people. So Marconi was, as he was experiencing right at that time. And so it was quite a dilemma for him.
So are you
And
saying
he
from
decided-
scratch?
Pardon me?
I mean, are you saying that he stole the idea from scratch, as in Marconi wasn't doing anything? He was just, fly fishing
I
at the
can't
time?
say that. Not from scratch, no. And I don't know all the technical details
But a thief
of it. Just
nonetheless.
that he was using several of Tesla's patents to do what he was doing, and he was, in fact, I think it was right at the same time that Tesla was in Colorado Springs that Marconi was sending the first radio signal from,
I believe, a U.S. Navy ship.
yeah, but wasn't it from England to Newfoundland?
Something like that. Again, it was a
And
B-,
so
not
Tesla
an
was
A.
aware of that, and it was quite shocking to him. Tesla never believed that people would actually be capable of taking someone else's ideas and implementing them as their own and taking credit for them. That was something he did not anticipate. So he was in correspondence with his friend who was an editor, and
He didn't anticipate these things. This must
No,
have
he
been this
didn't.
must have been the world before lawyers.
no,
It was
it wasn't the world before lawyers,
more
but
peaceful world. No,
it
joking.
was, yes. But Tesla didn't. He thought better of people, and that was one of his challenges.
Let
And-
me delve into that just real quick, since you have touched on the both the personal and the professional life of this man. I
Yes.
mean, sometimes I think in retrospect everything looks a lot better. I mean, there must have been some negative qualities about this man.
Well, I think some people would say, I wouldn't personally, but some people would say that it's a negative quality to be naive about the business aspects of your endeavor, or not to be more informed about the ways of the world in that sense, that you're navigating, the way industry works and that sort of thing. And he was more of an artist in that sense.
Was he shy?
I don't know if he was necessarily shy, but I think he was quite reserved. And he socialized. Again, this is just from what I understand from reading about his life. He socialized, and he did what he needed to do to get investors and to be out in the world. And he could be quite extroverted, but I think he was happiest when he was alone and inventing.
Fascinating, again. Absolutely fascinating. And you must have, none of us can endeavor in this world by ourselves. I'm assuming you put together a team to help you with this film?
Oh, absolutely, yes.
And finally,
I have a fantastic co-producer, and I have, of course, the cinematographer and the rest of the team.
And I'm just going to assume that, I'm not going to assume, I'm going to invite our listeners out there to get involved with this fantastic project. Again, Pictures of Infinity, the ultimate quest of Nikola Tesla. Tesla said Earth itself is a source of unlimited, naturally sustainable energy. This film retells his theory with experiments. Just very briefly, what kind of experiments do you get into?
Well, we begin... Actually, I told you about one of his early inventions as a 5-year-old was a water wheel that was unique, and we actually recreate that. It's important for the film because it later became another invention of his known as a bladeless turbine. And you'll have to see the film to understand it, but these inventions of Tesla's, everything that is in my film and everything that I focus on, it's all another piece of the puzzle, and the pieces all come together to reveal a completely new understanding of energy, which was Tesla's understanding.
Well, right now, there's nothing like human energy, and we're running out of time. But is there a way that folks can check out what you're doing, get involved, and contribute?
Yes, please, everyone. The name of the film is Pictures of Infinity, and there are experiments that have never been seen before. We have interviews that have never been seen. This is the first time that people will see a lot of new information about Nikola Tesla, even if you're very familiar with his earlier works or what has already been produced and is available for people to see. You have not seen this, and contributing, anything you can contribute will make it possible to complete it much sooner.
And that's certainly a goal that we hope you strive for and achieve, and we wish you all the best energy in the world. Miss Helen Hall, the producer of Pictures of Infinity, the ultimate quest of Nikola Tesla. Miss Hall, again, thank you so much for being on the program.